Welcome to the Gain Momentum podcast, focusing on timeless lessons from senior leaders in hospitality, food service, travel, and technology. Our co-host today is Vincent Somson. Vincent, how are you?
Very good, Adam. Thank you. And looking forward to this chat again.
Awesome. And our special guest today is Matthew Opferkuch. How are you?
Well, Adam, very glad to be here today. Sadly not a beautiful day where I am, but a nice day for a podcast.
So for listeners and readers and watchers, Matthew is the CEO and co-founder of the Laundry Rooms. He is coming in, I believe you're in Hamilton today, or
I'm actually in our Waterloo location today.
Right. So Waterloo, Ontario, and I'm coming from Toronto. So as a background, before we get into our questions, I think some geography is in order. So Matthew, if you want to tell people about the lovely geography of Southern Ontario so people know where Hamilton, Kitchener, Waterloo, KW is relative to Toronto, which they may know.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we're sort of southwest and west of Toronto in what's called the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area. These are secondary markets, which we focused on sort of during the early days. We'll get into that in just a minute. We are slowly working our way into these sort of major urban corridors like Toronto, Montreal, and so on. But as I mentioned, we started out very much in the secondary market.
Awesome. So we have here two Canadians from Southern Ontario, and Vincent is coming from Valencia, Spain, to give us a perspective on Europe, which is essentially the land of small groups and independence. So bringing a great perspective on this episode. So Matthew, our first question for you is, what single piece of advice would you give to vendor companies entering hospitality?
It's a good one. I mean, I get hit up all day, every day by somebody trying to sell us something. For the most part, it's tech related these days. And so I think, if you're going to try and sell particularly tech, but just about anything, find the niche. And that is to say, what problem are you going to solve for me? And, I have so many software companies particularly come to me with, they have the solution for everything. They're going to solve all my problems. And that tells me immediately they're not going to help me one bit. If you can solve one specific problem and really solve that problem, you've got a real shot at success in my mind.
So without giving away what your particular tech stack is, we're talking going back to founding the Laundry Rooms, an emerging brand in 2019, correct? Is that when it was founded?
That's right. Yeah. Founded in 2019, and we opened in the midst of the pandemic in September of 2020.
Wow. And the Laundry Rooms, how would you define your hotel category that the company's in?
Sure. So just to clarify, we started out, I'm a hotelier by trade. I've been operating hotels my entire career. And we started out actually in the short-term rental niche, which I realize is almost a four-letter word for those of us in the hotel industry. And we have since sort of moved away from short-term rentals and into hoteling, but in a very different model from sort of conventional hotel management companies. We launched in September of 2020. We launched within the context of a mixed-use residential development, and we had 40 of those residential units that we treated as effectively hotel rooms, right? Mm-hmm. And, as I mentioned, we launched in September of 2020. If you'll recall, there were all kinds of lockdowns and all sorts of restrictions related to COVID. We actually thought we would be insolvent in a matter of weeks. We figured we'd all just written checks and, that was going to be the end of it. Much to our surprise, our first location in Waterloo is considered the tech hub of Canada. Those of you familiar with Waterloo, Ontario will know that. Google's Canadian headquarters is here, and there's Shopify and Myovision and several others. And these companies, thankfully, continued to bring engineers, programmers, and so forth from all over the globe. Even, despite the sort of restrictions. And because of the nature of our product, we offer a full residential apartment. So you've got kitchens, laundry facilities, 800, 1,000 square feet. So these engineers could come, self-isolate for 2 weeks. We had developed, even prior to COVID, a sort of contactless system whereby guests can make their reservation, check in, check out, communicate all via their mobile device. And that proved to be a real sort of win during COVID, as you can imagine. And so lo and behold, what we thought was going to be a disaster, we started to see some traction, and we would have these bookings, these engineers coming from all over the globe, staying with us for 2 weeks, self-isolating during that period, and then sticking around for another 4, 6, 8 weeks while they worked on a project. Again, because of the nature of the Waterloo market, the tech industry, and so forth, we gained a lot of traction and lived to tell the tale.
Wow. So tying it back to the first question here, launching in September 2020, all the pivoting and the question marks that existed for the first 3 quarters of that year, how did you guide the decision-making process for the technology stack and the vendors you selected based on where the product needed to be at launch?
Yeah, that's another good question. We did not want to be the sort of traditional hotel company, and not to sort of call out, well, I will call out a couple of names. Why not? Opera, Oracle have been around for, since Jesus was a babe, and has been the sort of standard in the hotel industry for certainly as long as I've been in it, and that's a long time. And so we chose not to go that route. I don't want to get into sort of specifics, but we did find, and I know you had Richard Walter on the program, I believe, some time ago, and so we landed on Muse. Great cloud-based product, very easy to use, great user interface. Still has, if I'm being completely honest, still has a way to go in terms of getting into particularly sort of group functionality and so forth. But, again, when we started this thing 5 years ago, we did not imagine that we would see the success and growth that we've seen to date. So it suited our need at the time and continues to do so to this day. And there have been vast improvements on that platform. They also have a very a robust, I guess, marketplace that allows us to select partner vendors that have full API integrations, which again creates kind of a short list because there are, as you know, so many vendors out there. If we talk about, let's say, guest communication, just as an example, there are probably several hundred solutions out there. I'm familiar with a couple of dozen myself. And so the selection process it's a monumental task. And so again, Muse, I think, did a really nice job of creating that sort of marketplace, again, recognizing that they have that amazing integration. And then it was just a matter of simply shortlisting from the marketplace.
Yeah, that makes sense. Matthew, what about artificial intelligence? Do you see any implication on your specific business with the rise in the last couple of 18 months, increased quality, increased speed, increased use cases for hospitality, but for particularly your business and your segment?
Right.
Does it have any implications for you?
It does. I will tell you that up to this point, the AI has been, I'll say, underwhelming as it relates to our business. Certainly, in terms of revenue management, there are great implications, and I would argue that sort of that form of AI has been around for much longer than people care to sort of recognize. We all think it all happened last year. It's been happening for the better part of a decade. Certainly, the chatbot implication has some real potential for us. We are, as you can imagine, we have limited staffing, and that's part of the sort of the beauty of the model. And so any way that we can become more efficient and more effective is, of course, attractive. So that we're keeping a very close eye on these on the chat models in terms of guest communication. Answering those sort of day-to-day questions that come up on virtually every guest, for example, right?
Yeah.
Certainly that is the case. There's some business intelligence software out there that's interesting as well in terms of gathering and deciphering guest data, which, we're very intrigued by. We're still, we're a relatively small player though. And as I'm often reminded by my CFO, we have a a robust tech stack to begin with. And so we have to sort of balance, right? I would love to have some additional business intelligence tools, for example, but the cost at this point probably doesn't outweigh the benefit.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I think a question that relates back to Europe, we're seeing a lot of similar concepts of fully serviced apartments here in Europe.
Sure.
Particularly boutique groups. They have a keen focus on community and building co-work facilities within their concepts. Is that something that you also keep in mind in your expansion, in your philosophy from the brand as well?
Yeah, that is an interesting concept, and we do follow several of the European operators keenly. You seem to have been certainly on the serviced apartment side, light years ahead of anything that's been done here in North America. We do, very much so. And I told myself we weren't going to talk about it, but here we are. In Waterloo, we have a product called La Social House, which is, in fact, a private members club that is situated in the same building as our hotel. And so guests of the laundry rooms can access the members club, and it provides them with exactly that: co-working facilities, beautiful restaurant space, private boardrooms, and so on and so forth. And we've been testing that product now for just about a year. The challenge is that it is ultimately still a food and beverage product. And for those of you in the industry, you know that food and beverage represents 10% margin and 90% headaches, where perhaps the opposite is true in the accommodation segment. So as much as we see the upside, it won't scale nearly as quickly as the laundry rooms and the accommodations piece.
Well, not to be devil's advocate on what you just said there is, can you draw a correlation between the presence of a Lala members club on site with the attractiveness to book your hotel rooms in terms of a mixed use real estate value added play?
Yeah, honestly, I would say today, no. There are certainly, there are certainly some guests for whom it is, very much, it's very attractive, let's say. But when I look at the cost versus the benefit today, I would have to say no, truthfully.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that's, again, it could be market specific. Waterloo, Ontario is a relatively small market. It's only a couple of 100,000 people. I'd like to test it in Toronto.
Yeah. I mean, well, then you're going up against guys like Soho House and all them. So
yeah,
it'd be fun.
Yeah, it would be fun.
Matthew, let's get into our second question here.
Sure.
What are some of the challenges or setbacks you've experienced when rolling out a new business expansion or partnership?
Yeah, well, partnership that's a tough one. You've got to be so careful. And I will say, like any relationships in life, be careful. You, with the right people and the right partners, you can do virtually anything. And I consider myself extremely lucky. I have 3 partners in the laundry rooms business, and each brings, a sort of a core strength to the table, whether it's finance, whether it's branding and marketing, or, operations, or what have you. I would say, get to know your partners, and even on a personal level, it's so important to enjoy the people you deal with on a daily basis. And if you don't sort of get along, and I know that seems perhaps sort of, obvious, but I find that's not always the case. And if you don't get along with the people you're dealing with on a daily basis, odds are you're not going to be set up for success. That really is kind of the reality. And then secondly, and certainly as importantly, maybe more importantly, is understand where your capital is coming from. Particularly in today's climate. When we launched 5 years ago in 2019, we were borrowing money at 3-4%. Here we are in 2024, and we would be borrowing money north of 15%. So, having access to capital, and I'll say cheaper capital, is absolutely key. And, keep some powder dry, because we've all witnessed, we've all been witness over the last several years in terms of the cost of capital. And the guys who have done it right have managed to keep some powder dry, and we'll see the other side of this thing. But we've also seen, and I'm sure you two have as well, several companies drop off as a result.
To pick out one thing on the first part about partnerships, before getting into the capital, which is maybe more fun for people to hear, talk about relationships, and relationships can have a honeymoon phase. So when we're picking out partners, what green flags and red flags would you look for during those initial engagements to indicate that somebody is a good long-term partner or associate?
Listen, I'm not a psychologist, but I can tell you that understanding somebody's motivation to be in business is very telling. We've all watched several companies similar to ours, like with a similar business model, build what I call a valuation. They go up. Let's use WeWork as an example, because they're not a competitor of mine. WeWork was clearly in the business of building a valuation, right? Not in the business of building a brand. And building a brand is very different. It's slower, it's more methodical, it's more purposeful. You're right, you're not going to cash out with the tech billions, perhaps, but in the long run, it will serve you better, particularly when there's a downturn in the market like there is now. And so when we talk about partners, if one of my partners was saying to me, hey, let's build a valuation, let's take this thing to $100 million and, or $1 billion and sell it. As tempting as that might have been, it's not the right approach. It's certainly not my approach. And, again, we've borne witness to a couple of companies recently, high profile companies, WeWork being one, that are paying the price.
So we're talking about the pressures to grow a valuation, and even your equity partners, your capital may be pressuring you for that increased valuation. Certainly. How do you put the brakes on anyone who really wants that to emphasize strategic growth and reinforcing your brand equity?
Yeah, and again, look, I'm not adverse to growth. That, to be clear, of course, we are in this business to make money and grow like any business. I think you just have to sort of pick your lane. One of the things I'm most proud of with the laundry rooms is, as I mentioned, we have this sort of contact-free solution whereby we can run a hotel with effectively no bodies. We don't. We, in fact, have management on site. That's a choice, and that's a brand decision. But one of the things I'm most proud of is if you look at our reviews across the board, almost without exception, they are 5 stars. And I'm a lifelong hotel guy. I grew up in luxury hotels. I've run arguably some of the best hotels, certainly in Canada. And if you had suggested to me 6, 7, 10 years ago that I could run a hotel with 2 people and a really cool tech stack and generate 5-star reviews, I would have laughed you out of the room. There's no way. You need a concierge, a valet, a bellman, a doorman, a houseman, and so on and so forth. And here we are in 2024. And if you look at our reviews, we are almost without exception 5 stars across the board. We run a very efficient model, and it is lucrative. We make money, but it also resonates. And so in my mind, back to your question, there's much more equity in that brand than there is in a, pop and fizzle valuation model.
Well, Matthew, we'll move into our third question, which is looking ahead. What do you see as the biggest opportunities for growth in hospitality for 2024 and beyond?
Yeah, certainly on the tech side, the opportunities there are almost limitless, and we can chat a little further on those. Something you've written a great deal on, Adam, is wellness. And, there's no doubt in my mind that wellness will continue to be at the forefront of virtually everything, not just hospitality. I was listening to a really interesting podcast yesterday, actually, on the Economist about Ozempic. And, I had no idea it costs roughly $1,000 a month, I guess. But it is very much geared towards currently wealthy Americans. And, they are, of course, A, they can afford it, and B, they are very sort of, I'll say, self-conscious. And so this is, that is very much a discretionary spend. And yet people are choosing to spend $12,000 a year, US, to lose some weight. And I think that's very telling of, where we're headed, particularly on the sort of the upscale and luxury end of things, and how wellness is going to continue to play into that. I'm not suggesting that Ozempic is necessarily a wellness play, but it's certainly in the same vein. And, we've all experienced it. I mean, the proliferation of spas in North America over the last decade or 2 decades even, we see them popping up left and right. People want to take care of themselves, and, people have the means, frankly, to take care of themselves. So wellness, certainly. Branded residences, that's another one that, I know there's an opportunity there. And again, we're seeing those proliferate. We saw, 10, 15 years ago in Toronto, right? With the Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton, the formerly Trump Tower, now St. Regis. Those were all sort of mixed use developments that incorporated branded residences. And it allows the developer an opportunity to leverage the brand to sell at a higher per square foot, because of course you can attach the Four Seasons name to it, and also provides guests with the assurance, the brand promise, if you will, that you're buying something that is in fact going to live up to those high standards. Yeah, and on the tech side, like I said earlier, there we have a very good tech stack. I think it works, but there's always room for improvement, and there are opportunities abound on the tech side of things, as I'm sure you both would agree.
So you've given us 3 things to follow up on here: wellness, branded residences, and technology. A lot of these, the first 2 at least, are most applicable right now still to the luxury end, the 5-star. And we can pick out some of the economics behind that. But now drilling down to how that applies to myself and Vincent, we are both younger consumers, and maybe I guess the term is we maybe are Henrys, high earners, not rich yet, as an acronym. But
Okay.
so we're more likely to stay in your product than a Four Seasons or a Mandarin Oriental or a Rosewood as we travel.
Sure.
How do you see wellness and branded residences applying to the mid-scale and upmarket, not just luxury?
Oh, that's interesting. I'll come back to wellness in a second. On the branded residences, and maybe the term branded isn't correct in this instance, but certainly sort of offering or providing hotel-like services within a residential context, whether that's branded or otherwise. So we've also tinkered with, we obviously provide housekeeping services, for example, for our hotel guests. We have a team of who provide repairs and maintenance as well. So we have been testing a model called room service that provides residents, not hotel guests, residents, with those same services via an app. So if I'm living here in Uptown Waterloo and I need housekeeping services, for example, or I need a chandelier hung, or virtually anything, a dog walker, whatever the case may be, you can in fact avail yourself of those services via our app. And so that's something we're testing, and that's very much geared towards the mid-market. Here in Waterloo, for example, I think you can probably buy a condo in the building I'm in right now for roughly $800,000, which by today's standards is considered very much mid-market, certainly by Toronto standards. Yeah. And we're finding that the consumers are, again, they're looking for that convenience. Again, as the population continues to age, this may not sort of be geared towards you two at this point, but as the population continues to age, that sort of assisted living component is also very attractive, right? If you're in your 70s but you're still not ready to move to a retirement home, we can provide services that will allow you to stay within your current residence. Right. On the wellness side, that's a tough one for us. I mean, we certainly provide gyms at all our locations, and we get a lot of demand for that. I would love to find the right spa partner, but it's virtually impossible to find someone who can operate at a high level at scale. Most great spas are sort of either owner operated or at a very high level. You mentioned sort of, Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons, and so forth. That's a tough one. We haven't cracked that nut yet.
I think, Adam, you talk about it and you write about it a lot, right? What you can do within the rooms as well. Apart from external facilities, what are some things that you say, you could implement?
In the room, so we're talking sleep tech, some stuff around the programming on the interactive TVs. You can have stuff built into an app, like the now classic example is Hyatt's integration with Headspace, and the mindfulness app. Is that what you're referring to, Vincent?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually, I follow everything you sort of publish, Adam, and you've written a great deal on sleep tech, on even the right bedding, for example, which is seemingly obvious, but perhaps not so obvious for some hoteliers. We take we take great pride in the physical product that we offer. The mattresses, the bedding, and so forth are all extremely high end, much more high end than sort of where we position our brand in general, right? We're sort of upper mid, I would say, but the beds we provide you would find at the Ritz-Carlton, as an example. So we take that extremely seriously. Something I experienced personally recently, I stayed in Halifax at the Muir Hotel, which is a beautiful Marriott Autograph Collection hotel that opened last year, and they had a really cool, just a little QR code next to the bed, and it would take you directly to, I can't remember whether it was Spotify, but regardless, and it had the beautiful sort of soothing sounds of the ocean, which, we were in Halifax looking out at the ocean beyond, and it was just so calming and so soothing, and such a sort of relatively low tech and very low cost idea or example. That's something that we are going to play off in the not too distant future at the Laundry Rooms.
You say it's low tech, but you think about it, it's QR codes. Then you have to have some sort of single sign-on underneath there to recognize that it's a hotel guest in this room. There's probably some tracking to know where and when you accessed it, and then you need to have that curated subscription list, which maybe needs to change over time so it isn't the same thing. So it still is a lot of technology behind that. Yeah,
I guess I'm just so accustomed to all things tech these days. I take it for granted.
Yeah. And of course, the technology there, it has to be seamless. It has to be frictionless. It has to be convenient to the guest in order for it to work as a feature.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of technology, how do you think it impacts also your employees, the people that work, with your brand? How does did that change in the last couple of years, especially during COVID, when a lot of people left hospitality, right, because of various reasons? Did it change your mind in a certain sense, how you look, to technology and the people that work with that technology, or is that something that this is not a priority, just a business case, so to say?
Yeah, that really is a great question, and you're absolutely correct in that it did certainly change our approach. I'll say to some extent, it allows us to be kind of a sexier brand. We're very much sort of moving into the future, as opposed to many hotel brands that simply are not. It does allow us to work remotely to a large extent as well, which is extremely attractive, particularly in the context of a hospitality business, which is it's rarely the case in our industry, as you both know. And we are able to, in our case, we always say, we put the people where you need them and not where we don't. So, for example, our accounting, my P&L self-populates because I have a really cool interface between our property management system and our accounting platform. So I don't need a team of bookkeepers, for example, right? And what that allows me to do, of course, is to compensate the guest-facing employees better. We provide them with flexible hours. If we have only 4 or 5 check-ins today, for example, at a given location, well, I don't need you there for 16 hours, right? So if that means you can work from home, as long as guest communication is there and the guest checks in without any incident and so forth, then terrific. We can provide them with that flexibility. We can better compensate them and provide them with benefits, which we do to every one of our employees. Again, something that we're quite proud of. And so you're exactly right, Vincent. We have a young, motivated workforce who otherwise would probably be becoming electricians and, because it was a really tough slog during COVID, as you know.
Yeah, it's incredible to think to being tech forward is part of your secret sauce, both on the IP side of your technology, how you're able to draw more EBITDA out of that equation, but also on keeping great team members around. And that's a huge lesson for our brands to really figure out in terms of how to make your tech stack work for the employee side.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as a lifelong hotelier, I would never have imagined that as a consumer, that I would be happy with sort of a relatively low touch, high tech approach. But I have to say, even in my case, and I initially I thought we would be targeting, guests, I'll say your age, Vincent, Adam, in the sort of, the 20 and 30 somethings. But more and more, I'm finding guests in their 40s, 50s, even 60s. They want to avoid the lineup. They want to get to their room. They lay their head on their pillow. They can text us and tell us they want a softer pillow, more pillows, a bottle of wine, and whatever the case may be, we can provide it. And it's all done via this mobile device, which seems, again, counterintuitive for somebody who's been in hospitality for their entire careers. But I will say that we can still provide an exceptional level of service.
Wow. It speaks to the timelessness of these convenient tech platforms that you've built and that others are trying to build.
Yeah, and again, time and place as well, right? I mean, yes, if I'm on holiday, of course, I would love it if the concierge would help me out and deal with my booking for scuba diving and whatever the case may be. But certainly in our sort of more urban experience, the tech applies. And actually, even then, I say that I stayed at a resort not that long ago, and there was a pretty good tech component. And again, it's not that I don't like talking to people. Of course, I do, but sometimes it's nice to do it from the comfort of your bed and just simply click a few buttons and voila, you're off to scuba lessons at 9 a.m. and sailing at 11 and whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I guess, to draw another term here, a lot of people forget that not all of us are extroverts and not all of us are extroverts all the time. We're ambiverts, which is the new term for that. We flip, we vacillate.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. Matthew, our fourth question and final question. What problems would you advise entrepreneurs to focus on solving in order to quickly scale within the hotel industry?
Well, again, back to my sort of cautionary tale about scaling quickly. I would be a little more cautious, and that's my nature as well, is just to be a little more cautious. I think personally that building a great brand, and whether that's a hotel business or a software platform or whatever the case may be, there's much more value in a really truly great brand than there is in a business that is simply scaling for the sake of scaling. So I would probably be a little more cautious than most. Even if I look at within our industry, Sonder is much talked about. They went public, 2 years ago now, I think, a $2 billion IPO. And the last time I checked, their market cap was about $250 million. So they burned through a lot of cash. And I have nothing but sort of respect and admiration for the folks there. They're incredibly intelligent and very successful. But I would argue that as a brand, it's neither here nor there. In some cases it's a hotel, in other cases it's an apartment, in some cases it's completely contact free, in other cases not. And, as we all know, at the end of the day, a brand is about consistency and it's about a brand promise, and it's tough to make a promise when the product is simply not consistent, the service is not consistent. So consistency is obviously a key. When you look at even Marriott's success, and I lovingly, in some cases, refer to them as Hotel Anywhere, because, you wake up in a beige room with inexpensive artwork, and you could be in Shanghai, in Dubai, in Mumbai, and you wouldn't know the difference. And you come downstairs, and guess what? There's scrambled eggs and cornflakes. I mean, again, these are hugely successful brands. So who am I to sort of criticize? But that's not what we're looking for. We talk a lot about a sense of place. We want you to, in our case, we actually provide our guests with what we call digital neighborhood guides. We want you to go out and take advantage of everything that these great neighborhoods have to offer, which is very counterintuitive to a sort of, let's say, a typical hotel. Anyway, I'm on a bit of a tangent there, but consistency of brand in any business, in my mind, should be at the very forefront.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the brand promise that you talked about. People don't go to McDonald's for the best burger. They just know that it's consistent. They get the exact same fries, the exact same burgers. May not be the best burger, but they'll know what they'll get. Whether it's in Shanghai or in Amsterdam or in Spain or in Toronto or wherever, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's wisely said, Matthew.
Yeah. Thanks, Vincent. Yeah.
Yeah. Not to stroke your ego too much, Matthew, but the whole idea of brand promise and consistency, though, that's at the core of what Warren Buffett uses as a barometer when he invests in a company. So it's very, very true for
I'll still have time to be a billionaire, Adam.
Yeah.
I missed the Warren Buffett ship, unfortunately.
You never know, right? With wellness, we're all young here, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think also as a young entrepreneur, do something you love, and we've all heard it and seen it and read it. But if you don't believe in it, and you to your core, if you don't believe in it, then find something else, truly, because otherwise you will spend the rest of your days really having to work. And, being an entrepreneur, particularly in 2024, it's not easy. It's a grind. And, there are more bad days than good. I'll be completely honest. It's tough, raising capital continually, dealing with all the various constraints and fiscal restraints and otherwise. So if you don't enjoy the work you're doing on top of it all, it's time for a change.
Yeah. Matthew, that's a fantastic place to end it, on a very, very profound lesson for young entrepreneurs, as well as a timeless lesson insofar as brand promise and consistency. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Adam, Vincent. Yeah, real pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Gain Momentum podcast. To stay up to date, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Gain Advisors, head to gainadvisors.com.